Hey, what's up? It's Josh from the High Tech Podcast here again with one of our weekly videos. When I say weekly videos, I probably mean kind of bi-weekly whenever Will and I are actually able to get them out. We were hoping to do this weekly, but the last couple weeks we've been a little swamped with our regular jobs and doing interviews for the podcast. But I promise you we've got some exciting content coming over the next couple weeks. With that said, I want to talk about this week, just share with you guys an idea that's really helped me and my team in the work I do. So I've shared in the podcast before that I work on a team that helps design and build online courses. And we really struggled over the first couple years I was on the team with this issue where we were often get overloaded. We felt like there were times we get overloaded with work and then times we wouldn't have enough work. And we were also seeing that we'd find a lot of problems and our team was quick to try to address those problems, but we do a lot of initiatives that felt like they never went anywhere or they weren't as effective as we were hoping. I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's experienced this. There's probably a couple of you saying, you know what, I've noticed the same thing. My institution tries to do some initiatives. My team's tried to do some things. Our department's tried to do some things. I've tried to do some stuff in my course, and it just hasn't worked out. It hasn't had the impact I was hoping it would, or I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels and nothing's changing. Well, our team was feeling that way, and luckily under the direction of our director, we decided to change that. And what would eventually become what's now our leadership team, a couple of us decided we were going to start to dig more into project management. And honestly, this is the trigger that got me into more project management. It's what eventually led me to get the certification and really changed the way I do my job over the last couple years. But when we were digging into it, we came across this concept of shaping a solution. This concept isn't new. Like, you're like, okay, that makes sense. I've heard the idea of shaping a solution, but it was this idea of shaping up a initiative, project, or idea that really is what revolutionized things for our team. It's this project management concept that came from a company called Basecamp. They released a book called Shape Up. Hopefully the cover is here or here, wherever I decided to put it. But they are the tool that our office has used for the last several years to manage tasks and communicate, kind of like Slack meets a task management, project management tool. Highly recommend the tool. We love it. But we found this book that they released from their leadership called Shape Up. And in it, they talk about this idea of basically whenever you do an initiative or a project or whatever it may be, often so many of us are too quick to skip to the what are we going to do instead of carefully thinking about the why, how much time we have to do it, and then think about the what we're going to do, but also think about the what we're not going to do. And their solution to this was to just plan better. And they came up with a process called the pitching process, or shape up process that they call in the book. Basically, the concept is this, that they don't start any initiative without having a pitch. And in this pitch, there's 4 different components. Now, our team took it and adapted it a little bit. So I'm going to share with you kind of a combo of what they did and our adaptation. The first part of the pitch, first of all, understand the pitch is not a full out like proposal if you've ever seen them, or those of you who project manage have heard of a project matrix. That's not the same thing. This is essentially just a document with 4 parts to it. And you basically just write out the answers to 4 questions. The first question is this: what is the problem? This sounds simple, but think about it. How many of us skip by this when we're trying to do something? From large initiatives in our institution to even those of us teaching, how many of us just kind of assume we know what the issue is, and then we just come up with a solution? And we like to talk about solutions. As long as we're doing something, we feel better about what we're doing and fixing the issue. But they argue we should take more time to actually think about what the real problem is. And so what our team does is we answer this question. We articulate it usually in a paragraph or 2. And we carefully take time to articulate and get laser focused on what our problem is. So what we'll do is we'll write out what the problem is. Often it's collaborative. We're working with other people. I highly recommend when you're trying to figure out things, both for your own course and as an institution, stop trying to plan by yourself. Plan with other people. Collaborative efforts change what we come up with. It makes it better. And so often we'll try to shape this out. So this has looked like stuff where we had layout problems in our courses. We wanted to get better solutions, so we started to shape things up. It's looked out where somebody from another team has said, hey, our students are confused about which courses they use this tool in or not. And so we took that feedback, wrote out the problem. We had them look over it. They approved what we wrote out. They were like, no, that's exactly what we're talking about. And so we put it in a description, a laser focused description of what the actual problem we're trying to address is. Sometimes this comes from research or from polling your students or from your exit surveys in your classes. You pull this together and you bring out the problem. The next thing in the pitch process is what we call the commitment. Basecamp in their Shape Up book actually calls it the appetite. And it's this idea that before you go from the problem to solution, you need to answer the question of how much time are you willing to spend on this problem? See, too often I think we just see a problem and we shape out whatever solution we can come up with. But the reality is we all have limited time and resources, down to the individual instructor teaching, to the institution planning out massive initiatives. You have limited resources. So before you start figuring out a solution, you need to figure out how much time you have. If you have this big problem in your course that you want to try to solve this problem, maybe your students aren't engaging enough or they're not motivated enough. Sure, you need to figure out that problem, but then you also need to answer how much time do you have to figure it out? You've got probably kids, a family, maybe it's June and your course starts in August. You don't have time to solve this problem with this giant solution. So you need to answer how much time you actually have. So this is where our team, now we work by production cycles, so we kind of pick our production cycle timelines. We have specific timelines, but if you're doing this on a personal level or an institutional or team level that doesn't have that, you can just pick the amount of time that you're willing to commit to it. I recommend doing it by weeks, not by days or hours. I think if you get too granular, you start to get unrealistic predictions and guesswork. So we just work by weeks. And so you lay that out, you specify it. It's also in this area of the pitch that we'll often lay out, like if there are other stakeholders or offices or people that need to be involved, we list them out and then bring them in to make sure that everybody's in agreement. This is how long we're going to do it. This is our timeline for what we're going to do. And this is what our problem is. So once we've figured out the problem, how long we are willing to take to solve it, we take those two things into consideration, and then we try to shape out a realistic solution to the problem. And this is in the solution section. It's basically, it says, what is the solution? And it's basically, how are we going to solve this? What are we going to do? What elements are going to come into this? And this is where we take time as a team to work out different concepts. If we're working on stuff in courses, we've done stuff like actually draw out assignments or make mock-ups of things. If we're implementing a tool, we'll test some things before we write some stuff down to get an idea of what we need to do and how. And we'll lay that out in this solution area. This often ends up being the longest part of the pitch. It's usually a couple paragraphs. It's got some hand-drawn or digital-drawn graphics that we call fat marker ideas, usually some mind maps, whatever we've come up with. It's all located in this solution. The idea in the solution is not to have everything perfectly laid out, because I think over planning is useless. But the point here is to get a rough idea. It's basically this concept that when you first start with a problem, the solution, you're trying to basically find it in the dark. And the shape up process, the part of writing out the solution, is you trying to bring some light in the darkness, to try to get a vision for what you want to do. And then the final part of the pitch is, what are we not doing? This is the part that is so important. Too often we say what we're going to do, but we don't set boundaries for ourselves. And my creative friends tend to say, well, that's too limiting. But the reality is, I believe real creativity can happen in boundaries. Those 4 questions have transformed the way that our team shapes out solutions and deals with projects and initiatives. So I hope you find them useful as well. Again, check out the High Tech Podcast for more content like this, as well as our podcast content at High Tech Podcast or hightechpod.us at our website. Hope you guys like it. Let me know if you guys have anything that's worked for you in shaping out solutions.